One of the most important aspects of working in Illustrator is to understand how to create and work with objects. The most simple way to create objects is probably using the shape tools, which you can find in the toolbar, and the shortcut for the rectangle tool is M, and the shortcut for the ellipse tool is L. Whenever you see a little arrow next to a tool on the toolbar, that means there's more additional tools on it, so that's when you have to right-click to show all of the additional tools. And whenever you see a list like this, you will also have an arrow on the right. If you click on that, you can create a floating palette for those tools. This you can move freely, so it's like a floating panel. And as you can see, it's very easy to switch between the different tools. Now, let me start with the rectangle tool. If I just click and drag, I can already see that it's going to create this rectangle for me. And on the right, I also see the width and height of this shape. Now, once I let go, the shape is actually created, and I can see it's being highlighted. If I want, I can also use this tool by just simply clicking anywhere on the artboard, which brings up the rectangle dialog box where I can type in the size I wish to use, let's say 20 by 20, click OK, and there's the square that I created. Every shape that you create will always use the two basic attributes, a fill color and a stroke color. These attributes can be changed up here in the options bar. I can click and select a different fill color, and I can also change the stroke color, which is the second swatch, and change that to a different color. I can also increase the stroke size here on the top. These we call the basic attributes, so the stroke size, color, and the fill color. If you wish to select a previous object, like this other rectangle here, you should use the black arrow tool or selection tool, which you can select by pressing V as well on the keyboard. Once you click on the other object, that will be also highlighted. And once again, we can change the colors of that. Now you can also decide not to have any fill colors. So if I set that to none, that means it's not filled with white, it's completely empty. And the way I can prove that is by moving this object outside of the canvas. Once it's there, you can see it actually doesn't have any fill color. Why is it important to remember this? It's because if I deselect this object by clicking on the other shape or clicking anywhere outside, next time I want to select it, I have to make sure I click on the edges of it and not inside. So if I click on the edge, that's how I can select it, because it doesn't have any fill color. When an object is selected, this bounding box appears around it, which we can use to resize it, rotate it, and make adjustments. But I will come back to that in the next video. For now, just remember whatever object is highlighted is the one that you can make changes to. If you quickly want to reset an object to the default attributes, the black stroke white fill, you can just simply press D on the keyboard. And you can see how quickly it reverted back to this setup. And of course, you can select multiple objects as well with the selection tool, the black arrow tool. So if I click and drag, make a marquee selection, I will have both objects selected. If they have different fill colors, I will see a question mark here. But as soon as I select a color, that will be applied to both of them at the same time. When you use the rectangle tool, you can also try to draw a perfect square by holding down either the Shift key, which will make sure it keeps it as a perfect square, or in Creative Cloud version, it will automatically help you to draw a square as soon as you are close enough to drawing a square. So with a rectangle, obviously, you can draw whatever you wish, but when you're close to a square, this diagonal purple line will help you to make sure it becomes a perfect square. The same thing applies to the ellipse tool. With the ellipse tool, whenever I'm drawing and I'm close to a perfect circle, it shows lines. So that will be a perfect circle. If you are on a previous version, just remember to hold down the Shift key whenever you want to draw a perfect circle or square. Another important shortcut is whenever you draw a new shape and you wish to draw it in a different position, just hold down the space bar, move it somewhere else, and then you can still continue drawing it if you are still holding down the mouse button. There is another tool called rounded rectangle tool, with which you can draw a shape which already has round corners. While you are drawing this, you can actually adjust the corners by pressing the up and down arrows. So that's a quick and easy way to adjust it. Another tool is the polygon tool, with which you can click and drag and draw a hexagon by default. By using the up and down arrows, you can increase or decrease the amount of corners. So you can go all the way down to a triangle. The next one would be a square, then a pentagon, hexagon, and so on and so forth. So that's another useful tool. And similarly to the polygon tool, you also have the star tool, which also has multiple corners. By default, it has 5 corner points, which can be again increased with the up arrow or decreased with the down arrow. You can also hold down the command with the star tool and drag it further out to change the length of each of these corners, or you can keep it much closer to the center of the shape. So holding down command or control on PC can change that. Another important thing to learn in Illustrator is that every time you create an object, it will also have anchor points. So this star, for example, has quite a lot of anchor points around it. And to access them, you should use the white arrow tool, which is called direct selection tool. So the black arrow will select the whole object, while the white arrow can select individual points. Like here, I selected that point and I could drag it out. In case of a circle, again, I can select points and very quickly create more like an egg shape, for example. You can also drag points into the shape itself and once again create custom shapes very quickly and easily. So that is the white arrow tool or direct selection tool. And the shortcut to select that quickly is A. V if you want to switch back to the main selection tool, the path selection, and A is for direct selection. Sometimes you might want to deselect everything by clicking somewhere outside, and then you can select the point you wanted to work with. You might think that geometric shapes are too basic and you will never use them, but believe me, they are probably the most important building blocks in Illustrator. There's a lot you can do with them, and almost everything starts with these basic geometric shapes. If you have Creative Cloud version, you actually have another tool called Shaper tool, which can create even more interesting results. So let me show that as well to you. It's here in the toolbar, just underneath the shape tools. That's the Shaper tool. It's actually combined with other drawing tools like the pencil tool. Well, let me just stick to the Shaper tool for now. And this tool is especially useful if you have a touchscreen laptop, for example, or a pen tablet with which you can draw. And I'm using a Wacom tablet in this case. And I am going to draw a couple of shapes with the Shaper tool. So I will start with a rectangle, then I draw a triangle, and you see, although I draw very roughly a triangle, the Shaper tool can still convert it to a nice geometric shape. If I want, I can select each of these shapes individually, and I can make changes to them. As you can see, I can even it out, and I can select this shape here as well, and then I'm going to make this one also slightly smaller. Now, another brilliant thing you can do, still using the same tool, is to combine elements. So for example, if I drew over with the scribble line over these triangles, they will be immediately combined, but that still allows me to select individual parts of this Shaper group and make amends to it. So if I wanted this one to be smaller, I can easily still do that. If I click and click again, I can select areas of that design and change the color or fill color of that. And I can select this other part as well. So it's click, wait a bit, and then click again. That's how you can change the colors of areas within the design. If I wanted, I could even subtract from this shape by drawing another shape, let's say a circle. And by scribbling over that, I can completely subtract it from whatever is behind. Of course, I'm going to undo these steps, so I use the shortcut Ctrl-Z or Command-Z or F1, depending what you set up for the undo command. But you can see with Shaper tool, you can very quickly get to a little bit more complex design. Now, don't worry if you don't have Creative Cloud. I'm going to show you similar techniques that's available in previous versions as well, like the Shape Builder and Pathfinder. But for those who use Creative Cloud, you can already play around a bit with the Shaper tool as well. Last but not least, there's also 2 additional shortcuts that I would like you to remember, and that's again to do with the basic attributes of shapes. So let me just switch back to one of these shapes here, and I'm going to increase the size of the stroke, and I will also change the color of that stroke. So I have a red fill and a cyan or blue outline or stroke on this shape. And if I quickly want to swap the colors of this shape, so use the stroke color on the fill and vice versa, for that there is another extremely useful shortcut, Shift X. So with Shift X, you can swap the colors on the selected shape. And if you quickly want to remove a color, let's say the stroke color, you can select it from the toolbar and then click on the None option here. That's how you can remove it. Now, you can also do this from the keyboard. If I undo that last step, I can press X on the keyboard to swap between whether the fill or the stroke color is highlighted. Whichever is in front is the one that's selected, and then use the forward slash on the keyboard, which is the same key where the question mark is. So if you click that, that will remove the currently selected color. So that's how I remove the stroke color. And if I want to remove the fill color, I can press X first to swap there, and then again press forward slash to remove it. And don't forget, if you want to switch back to the default colors, just press D. D for default, and that's white, fill, and black stroke. So this is what we need to know about the basic attributes and working with shapes in general. But in the next video, we will look into ways of transforming these shapes.